Today, we are learning how to use the verb gustar to talk about activities and things that you and others like to do. Welcome to Teacher Catalina, my channel where you learn Spanish from a native speaker, a certified Spanish teacher with more than 16 years of teaching experience. By the way, if you want to learn more, also follow me on social media. During our last lesson, we learned to use gustar to talk about the things that we like. For example, we learned to say, I like apples, or apples are pleasing to me. Today's focus is a little bit different. Our job is to learn how to say, I like to do something. For example, if we're still talking about apples, we would say something like, I like to eat apples. Do you see how that changes things? Very good. So that's our focus today, to learn how to say that us or somebody else likes to do a certain activity. So before we jump into that lesson, let's do a super quick review of the verb gustar. And again, if you need a more lengthy review, definitely go ahead and check out that video on the verb gustar so that you can spend a little bit more of time on that. But during our last lesson, we learned the indirect object pronouns, me, te, le, nos, os, les, and we learned that there are two forms of the verb gustar, gusta and gustan. We said that gusta is for singular things when you like singular things, like one apple, and plural would be gustan when you like multiple things, like multiple apples. Today, we will continue to use some of the things that we learned during our last lesson. For example, we're still going to be using all of those indirect object pronouns because we're still saying that something is pleasing to me or to you or to them or to us. So very important that you continue to use those indirect object pronouns. After that, we will select the correct form of gustar. And finally, we're going to add something here to this board, which is going to be our verbs in the infinitive. If you don't know what that is, do not worry. I'm going to walk you right through it. So in order to go ahead and put all of our sentences together, we have to know what are infinitives. And I know infinitive sounds like a little complicated, but it's nothing more than a fancy word to describe verbs that have not been conjugated. What does that mean? Basically, those are your two verbs in English. To run, to eat, to dance, to speak, to sing. Do you see how they all are to and then the activity? Those are your two verbs. Those are infinitives. Our job is to learn how to say them in Spanish. Here's the trick though. All verbs in Spanish that are in its infinitive form are always going to end in AR, ER, and IR. Yes, you heard that right. A verb in the infinitive in Spanish ends in AR, ER, or IR. So with that out of the way, we now have everything we need to go ahead and start putting our sentences together all in Spanish and to talk about the activities that you like to do and that all of us around us like to do. So now let's pay attention to our board here. Step number 1, we have to select the correct indirect object pronoun. Who is receiving the action? Who is being pleased by an activity? Who likes to do an activity? In this case, if I'm talking about myself, I would select me. So again, number 1, select the correct indirect object pronoun. Number 2, we have to select the correct form of gustar. And I have really good news for you. Are you ready? Excellent. For this lesson, and to talk about when somebody likes to do something, we are always going to use gusta. So let's get rid of gustan for this lesson because we're not going to be using it. Again, to talk about when somebody likes to do something, we are always going to use gusta. And finally, we are just going to add whatever activity it is, whatever verb in the infinitive at the end to finish up our sentence. And that's it. 3 steps. Again, indirect object pronoun, then gusta, always gusta, and then finally our verb in the infinitive, and you have a perfect sentence in Spanish that talks about what you or others like to do. All right, so let's add some verbs in the infinitive over here in this part of our board. Let's start, for example, with the verb escribir. Escribir, that's to write. Then we could add the verb cantar. cantar, to sing. Maybe you want to use the verb comer, comer, to eat. Or maybe escuchar, escuchar, to listen. You could also use the verb bailar, bailar, to dance. And again, there are tons of verbs that you could use, which it would be important and it would be useful to you if you look at the handout that I have available for you at www.teachercatalina.com. Click on the library of resources. You will find a handout that reviews the verb gustar, gustar plus infinitive, and a ton of verbs in the infinitives. If you pay attention to all of these verbs, you will see that every single one of them ends in AR, ER, or IR. That's because they are verbs in the infinitive. And again, a reminder that in Spanish, any verb that ends in AR, ER, or IR, it's in its purest form. It's a verb in the infinitive. It has not been conjugated. And to talk about the things that we like to do, we need to keep that verb at the end in its purest form, in its infinitive form. So a typical question that I would ask you, or your teacher would ask you, or somebody may ask you would be, ¿qué te gusta hacer? ¿Qué te gusta hacer? Hacer means to do, and it's also a verb in the infinitive. So, ¿qué te gusta hacer? How are we going to answer that? Well, let's use everything that we have on the board here. If I'm talking about myself, I am going to say me gusta, and I don't know, I may check one of these activities. I may say me gusta bailar. Or maybe I want to say me gusta escribir. Do you see the pattern? Again, select the indirect object pronoun, gusta, and then one of the activities. So what if somebody asks me if I like to do something and the answer is no, I don't like to do that thing? Well, you probably recall from our last lesson that in order for us to say that we don't like something, we are going to put a big no in front of our indirect object pronoun. Well, the same rule applies here. We are going to add that no in front of our indirect object pronoun. So let's look at an example. Maybe somebody asks, ¿te gusta comer galletas? ¿Te gusta comer galletas? And maybe your answer is, no, I don't like to eat cookies. You would say, no, no me gusta comer galletas. No, no me gusta comer galletas. Did you remember that double no? Okay, good. If you didn't remember, that's okay. Now remember, the first no is answering the question and basically saying no. And the second no is basically saying, I don't like. That's the don't part. So no, no me gusta comer galletas. So maybe instead of asking, what do you like to do? Maybe somebody asks you if you like to do a certain activity. Let's look at an example here. Maybe I want to ask you guys, all of you guys watching the video, if you like to sing. I would say, ¿les gusta cantar? ¿Les gusta cantar? And now this one's a little bit tricky, so I want you to pay attention. I'm asking you guys, all of you, a group of you. Who would you be answering about? I'll give you a few seconds to think. Very good. You would be saying we. So you would be saying something like, yes, we like to sing, or no, we don't like to sing. Did you see how I asked you guys and you're answering we? You do the same exact thing in English that you would do in Spanish. So, in order to answer, ¿les gusta cantar? The answer has to have nos, because you're talking about we. So maybe you want to say, yes, we like to sing. Maybe all of you like to sing. So the answer would be, again, answer that question, sí, nos gusta cantar. Sí, nos gusta cantar. If the answer was no, then answer the question first. No, no nos gusta cantar. No, no nos gusta cantar. That is one of those little things that you want to practice and kind of remember. If a question is asked to you guys will answer about we. It's kind of like the same thing if I ask, do you like to sing? you would answer with, yes, I like to sing. Same process. So that's the whole lesson, guys. But let's do a little bit of practice to make sure that you have all of this under control. Here's a question. ¿Te gusta comer hamburguesas? ¿Te gusta comer hamburguesas? Think about it. How would you answer? Do you like to eat hamburgers? Look at all of those things that we have on the board. Ooh, I think you got it. Very good. You would say, sí, me gusta comer hamburguesas. Sí, me gusta comer hamburguesas. Or, no, no me gusta comer hamburguesas. No, no me gusta comer hamburguesas. You did a fantastic job. Muy bien. Now, you should be able to talk about the things that you and others like objects or things that you like. But today, you will also be able to add to your learning that you are able to say and talk about the things that you and others like to do. Again, things that you and others like to do. In order to do that, we will use our indirect object pronoun, only gusta, to talk about the things that you like to do, and then a verb and the infinitive. And that will give you a perfect sentence. Of course, you can add a couple of other things to those sentences to make them even more specific. But you have the basis of the verb gustar. Thank you so much for joining me today. By the way, if you have not yet subscribed to my channel, I have tons of videos that you can watch to learn more Spanish, or maybe even to practice. Also, you can go to www.teachercatalina.com where you can find tons of resources especially for you to help you in your Spanish journey. And they're all free. Simply go to my library of resources. Again, that website is www.teachercatalina.com. Also, while you're at it here, go ahead and click that like button, me gusta, since you already know how to say it in Spanish. And since you're already there, hit that notification bell so that you know when I have a new video. Muchas gracias y nos vemos la próxima vez. See you next time. Adiós.